century individuals you would have seen. He's had a good diet. You know, he's got no indications that he had childhood deficiencies. So I think actually life was probably not that horrible.
Although, as we're about to discover, it ended pretty horribly for this guy. The boys are gearing up to recreate his final moments.
Action.
Now, what do we know about how he may have met his end?
This chap here has got several things which tell us that he met a violent death. We've got 3 arrowheads in the grave with him. There's one over here, there's one here, and there's one here.
Jackie showed me exactly where the fatal arrows hit.
The most obvious one is actually in the sternum. You can see there's a very small nick. You'll be able to see that that corresponds with where the tip of an arrowhead has gone into the back of that sternum. So it's going to be from behind at this side, and that's going to have had to pass through an awful lot of soft tissue before it's got in there.
Yeah, and there's some important stuff in there, huh?
And that would have done for him. But that isn't the only place he was hit. In this case here, we have quite small marks in the bone. Now this is where the arrow has gone through between the ribs. Now the interesting thing about this is, it tells us he wasn't just shot once. We've got shots coming from either side of the body. So we've got at least 3 shots here, probably more, going into this individual from 2 different sides.
So what does that indicate?
Well, this wasn't just a matter of, oh, this chap's in the way, we're going to get rid of him. This guy's going down and he's definitely not going to come up again.
For us to be able to see the guy in the ditch being shot from multiple angles, the boys need to figure out how to give us a 360-degree view. To achieve this effect, Hollywood movies use hundreds of cameras. We have only one. So Steve is experimenting with his office chair.
I'd go again, mate. I wobbled quite a lot.
Our victim will stand on a fixed point in the center of the turntable while the camera and the green board move around him, which, if it works, will give us a 360-degree view and fix the wobble problem. While Steve gets on with creating his whirligig, I'm going to find out what the guy in the ditch did to deserve such a brutal death. Alison Sheridan specializes in ancient burials. What clues does the ditch victim's grave offer up?
And you think there's something off about this, don't you?
There's something very peculiar about this. Not least the fact that there were arrowheads found, and these were not grave goods. These were the arrows that had been used to shoot this guy dead.
But why do you think that happened?
My own hunch is that he tried to get into the sacred area of Stonehenge, which was just not allowed, and he paid the final price for it.
So just the common person just wasn't allowed in there. They weren't allowed to partake in Stonehenge.
Certainly suggests that Stonehenge was a place that was sacred to a very tiny number of people. So you had to be one of the elite, and anybody else who tried to get in, they shouldn't have gone.
Until I started researching this story, I'd imagined Stonehenge as somewhere the whole community was welcome. It's pretty shocking that experts believe it was reserved for an elite, and its exclusivity brutally maintained.
If you're just some poor schmuck and you tried to sneak in one night to have a little time by yourself or even see what the inside of it looked like, it's like thump, 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 in the ditch.
The whirligig is ready and the boys are about to film the 360-degree shots that will show us the death of the guy in the ditch. But will the homemade whirligig work? This is the moment the boys have been building up to. Inspired by my research, here is their recreation of the last brutal moments of the guy in the ditch. He's been seen entering the temple. He's surrounded. Here comes the view from the whirligig. This is no ordinary murder. This is the ritual protection of a great temple. The guy in the ditch is the only prehistoric example of murder at Stonehenge. Our last mission is to discover if his brutal death was really a rare occurrence. In the period before Stonehenge was built, there is strong evidence of violence.
Over the centuries, there's an accumulation of human remains with wounds from which they would have died. As well as the arrow wounds, we also have skulls that have been bashed in. And we can see for centuries before Stonehenge was built, there's continuous evidence of occasional warfare. In a few rare cases, we can actually see villages have been attacked.
The raising of Stonehenge involved hundreds or maybe even thousands of people working in concert for the common good. So, can we, by extension, deduce that A, Stonehenge ushers in an age of peace and harmony, or B, no, not even close. Stonehenge was the product of a huge communal effort. Today, many people associate it with peaceful solstice gatherings. But was the age of Stonehenge really harmonious? I'm going back to Tim Darville and Mike Pitts to find out.
Was it a violent time, like Stonehenge, as it was being built and developed at its peak?
I don't think it was a utopian, peaceful sort of place. It's nice to think of prehistory as the sort of green and pleasant land that everybody lived in. I'm sure it was not only a lot more traumatic on the part of individuals, but actually a lot more contentious. There was a lot more tension between societies at this time.
For their final reconstruction, the boys are going to show you the moment that tension erupts into a village attack.
100% cashmere. It feels it. It's scraping down my body.
The first scene they need to shoot is the attackers running into the village.
I'm a size 6.
They are, as usual, short of people, so Steve and Colin are pitching in.
I am dressed up as a Stonehenge band because we've got to do some running in to invade the village, and we need as many different variations on the costume as we can get. We've discovered that you can run much better in boots, so I'm leaving the boots on for now, and hopefully you won't notice in the final shot.
Time for Steve to get running.
Okay, recording. You're a tiger. You're an animal. Go!
These running shots will be used to show the attackers invading the village.
You guys knew you just...
I want to go deeper into the world of Stonehenge. What was it about the way society was organized that created tension?
What were people like? Like, what was their mindset? What was their life like?
Large, if you like, political, tribal groupings must have existed. Within those groups, we'd have smaller sections of society of some sort. Chieftains, if you like, clans of various sorts. Their future is often in the hands of alliances. And of course, as soon as you get alliances building up, arrangements that you think are secure, somebody realizes they've got a bit more power in this domain than they have down the road, as it were, and so tensions build up.
Obviously, Colin and Steve have absolutely no experience of on-screen fighting, so our reconstruction artists are giving them some prehistoric weapons training before we start our village attack.
Die, Scotsman!
There's no reason to think that that type of environment in which warfare, petty fighting over land was not one that continued throughout the period at which Stonehenge was being built and used.
Ah, yes. Tribal tensions and petty fighting. Steve is Scottish, Colin is English. Funnily enough, they've put themselves on opposing sides for the attack. It's England on the left, Scotland on the right. Lionheart versus Braveheart. Who will win? Let's see that again. Yep, pretty decisive. 1-0 England.
Is there one where I'm on top of him, I'm just pushing his eyes in with my thumbs?
Yeah, there's that one, alright, yeah.
I'll take it to fall if you want to.
Nope, that's fine. I've had enough.
Our experts believe the world of Stonehenge could be violent and hierarchical. Now I'm going to find out how the elite use Stonehenge to enhance their power.
You see that little hillock with the bush on it? That is the bush barrow, and inside it are the remains of a guy who may have been the king of Stonehenge. Or at least his bones are there because his treasure was yanked out a long time ago, and it's so precious that normally it's kept in a bank vault.
The bush barrow overlooks Stonehenge. The man buried there, sometimes dubbed the king of Stonehenge, lived at the end of the temple's glory days. Alison Sheridan has arranged for us to have special access to the artifacts the bush barrow man was buried with. We're starting with his mace, a club designed to deliver heavy blows.
The bone mounts are the originals. You see at the bottom that the end mount is slightly shinier than the others, so maybe, this has seen some use somehow.
Some head busting.
Well, it would have been a weapon. It could have been used as a weapon. You can do somebody a lot of damage with it, yeah? But it's absolutely a symbol of power. And then he had not one, but 2 daggers, exquisite daggers.
And they're huge.
They are huge, yeah. This one is of copper, and this one's of bronze. This had a superb hilt of wood that was decorated with something like 140,000 gold pins. And they would have made, the most beautiful object, the most prestigious object. I mean, it's a bit like the equivalent of our crown jewels, really.
Britain's first crown jewels.
Britain's crown, yeah, absolutely.
The stuff that was actually in the mound with him, that was buried with him, what does that say about him?
That he was a very, very high-ranking individual. So these are symbols of power. They are weapons of power. He drew part of his power, without doubt, from his proximity to Stonehenge and his privileged position with regard to access to the ceremonies at Stonehenge. And so if you were able to control some aspect of that, you could be a divine ruler. And you're expressing your power in terms of military things and exotica.
As ever, better to be a chief than a villager. We're about to see what life in Britain could really be like for the ordinary person in the age of Stonehenge. Our graphics wizards have built this village from just one original hut. Up on the hill, a rival tribe are gathering. They plan to raze this village to the ground and take the land for themselves. Two tribes collide in a bloody fight. The attackers win. These villagers have lost their land. We've shown you that the world of Stonehenge could be brutal. When we think of Stonehenge only as a temple, we aren't seeing the whole picture. It drew power from the heavens, but it was also a power base on Earth.